This webinar is brought to you by Certified Human Resource Management Professionals, CHRMP. CHRMP is a global certification in human resource management. It is in India. It's available in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi. Globally, this certification can be taken in 190 countries across 5,600 test centers in association with Pearson VUE. Now, talking about training effectiveness, I think let's first talk about training effectiveness in terms of learning or training interventions or learning interventions, or as now we are increasingly calling it talent development, right? I think organizational capability building is of top strategic priority. That is something that any modern day organization, any organization which is futuristic, which is looking at enhancing and achieving targets, is investing in people. The days of investment in property, in assets, apart from people are long gone. I think people are value assets, and organizational capability building in terms of investment in people is of top strategic priority, and this is happening all across. And this is, as I said, achieved through talent development. How are you developing talent? You are developing talent by upskilling them, by making them learn new skills, new competencies, new outcomes that then they can go about creating it in the job, right? Now, as I move on, let me just structure the whole seminar for you. I would first initially introduce the topic and take you through the importance of learning effectiveness and why it is important for learning managers, training managers, HRs, and business and organization to know about how learning interventions went and how effective was the training. I would then take you through the various methods and model of learning effectiveness. I will run you through the 4 levels and also showcase it to you of how these ROI tools and techniques look. And towards the end, I would take you through a tool which is used, which is used for training effectiveness, and that is something very, very new that has happened to the learning industry, so that you are well equipped with what is happening and what is changing, and with the latest trend in learning effectiveness or training effectiveness measurement, right? Now, just to focus on this term, talent development, I think if you look at how terminologies have changed in human resource and in training, there has been quite a change. About 10 years back, we were talking about T&D, which was training and development, right? About 5 years back, or about 7 years back, organizations increasingly started calling the departments L&D, learning and development, right? Now the trend is moved from T&D to L&D to talent development. And the reason is that organizations are increasingly following what you call as competency-based HR practices. It aims at outcome that every department, every process, every unit within the HR system or within the department, what it wants to create. And the aim of training, the aim of making people learn, is to develop talent. And that's why training was called learning, and now learning is being increasingly called talent development. This shows the focus that organizations have in terms of capability building, and also in terms of training effectiveness, which goes about proving how effective the program has been for developing the talent, right? So as I spoke about, organization capability building is of top strategic priority, and it is achieved through talent development. And when we talk about talent development, training is a costly affair. Training is not cheap, right? It's not very cheap. A lot of times Training is called an essential evil because it's evil because it's costing to the company. At the same time, it's essential because organizations have to upskill their employees and their associates in terms of achieving business targets. So why do you think training is a costly affair? What do you think are the costs involved in training? If I can take a minute and ask you, what do you think are the various costs involved in training? You can probably in the chat option, probably you can ping in. You can ping in here in terms of letting me know what do you think are the costs involved in training. Okay, cost of TNA. Cost of trainer, ROI, trainer, infra, trainer costs, right? Okay, so if we pick up a typical day of training, one day of training, what is the cost involved? The cost involved are following. Give me a moment, right? If you look at cost of training, apart from the money that is spent in maintaining a training or a learning or a L&D department, for that one day of training where let's say 15 or 20 or 30 participants are attending the training, they're not doing anything, isn't it? They're not at work. They are not doing anything productive for the organization, but they are getting paid because it's not a leave. It's not counted as leave. So when you talk about cost of one particular training day, one day of training that the employees are attending, it involves salary cost. It involved productivity loss, right? When I say productivity loss, normally the calculation of salary versus productivity ranges between 1:3, 1:5, and sometimes even more. So if $1 is being paid in terms of salary, or if $100 per day is being paid as salary, it means that $300 or $500 is the productivity loss on an average in terms of cost of training. Yeah. And yes, as somebody mentioned, there is infrastructure costs, there is trainer and the training cost. Apart from that, there is a TNA cost. And apart from that, the whole organizing and coordinating and X and Y and Z costs. Sometimes trainers are flown down. You have to arrange for their accommodation, for their travel, etc., etc., etc. All that comes in terms of cost of training. So when we say cost of training, now let's understand this cost in detail, because if we don't understand the cost, we will, to relate it to the effectiveness, would be wrong, right? So when we say 20 people sitting through, and let's say we are talking about an average salary being $100 or 1,000 rupees per day, we are talking about 20,000 rupees, or probably $20,000 in terms of salary costs. And if you multiply it in terms of 1:3, we are talking about close to 60,000 rupees, or maybe, I mean, I'm not really getting into the maths, but just to put across, maybe $60,000 in terms of productivity loss of 20 people attending one day of training. And then apart from that, maybe infrastructure cost and trainer cost is adding somewhere about 30 to 40% of salary and productivity costs put together. So this is huge, because if one day of training is costing an organization 1 to 1.5 lakh, or maybe 20,000 or $30,000, it's huge cost. And as part of a L&D team, and as part of L&D system, it's our responsibility to then prove to the business that the impact of the training or the ROI on training or the effectiveness of training is visible, right? So it's very, very important. And organizations are increasingly getting conscious on this. They're increasingly wanting to know. Gone are the days when training was one off day where people were ordering pizzas and they were having a relaxed day. In fact, one of the campaigns Ripples ran was called Training Can Be More campaign, because training today is more. Training is much more than what it was perceived to be earlier. Organizations want value add and they want proof of that value add. They want vendors, they want the training team, they want the HR department to go about proving that every penny or every dollar that goes as training spend is well spent and is useful for the organization. So this was just to stress on the larger point of why training effectiveness has come into picture. These metrics are important because a lot of times we miss on and we only look at maybe the infrastructure cost or training cost. We forget costs like salary cost, productivity loss, etc. It's important to capture this as well, because when we talk about the whole idea of analytics and when we talk about the whole idea of calculating ROI, I think keeping all this in mind would really, really help. Yeah. Now, these are some of the problem statements that L&D manager faces or a HR department faces. This is what business or the management goes about asking in terms of how well did the training intervention go? Was the training or learning effective? Do I see things changing on ground? What is the ROI for the organization? Now, these four questions needs to be answered. And to be able to then prove training effectiveness, this is what any organization wants, isn't it? Is talent development efforts driving performance? Is L&D, is training efforts, is our learning efforts, our training programs being conducted by organizations driving performance or not? And this is what every all businesses are interested in, all organizations are interested in, and it is our responsibility to go about proving it back to the organization that this is the net result of the intervention that we planned and we executed. And how we will do that is something that we would be discussing now, right? So this is what has gone into the whole thing, isn't it? We have gone about analyzing the need of training. We have gone about designing programs. We have gone about developing content customized or told the vendor to deliver a program which is customized to the need of the organization. And then there has been delivery of the program. And then finally, we are talking about evaluation, right? How do we evaluate or how do we measure training effectiveness, right? Now, training effectiveness has a simple model. It's called Kirkpatrick Model of Measuring Learning Effectiveness. Kirkpatrick Model of Measuring Learning Effectiveness. Kirkpatrick Model has 4 levels: L1, L2, L3, and L4, right? There are 4 levels to this model. And I'm sure that many of you being part of HR department and being part of L&D department would know about this model and would know about what L3, L4, L2, L3, L4 stands for. However, what I would be doing is that I would be taking you through this model and also talking about the best practices of organizations which are using this model to prove training effectiveness to business, and how exactly it's being done. What are the things that we can do in terms of adding value back, and what are the systems that we can change which currently exist in our organization or otherwise, is something that I would be talking about. Now, so what happens after a training program? What happens when a program ends? I would like probably few few options from you. What happens? What happens when the trainer says, "Okay, guys, we are done." What is the next thing he or she does, or what is the next thing that participants do? I mean, apart from getting up and leaving, what happens just before that? Guys, probably you can quickly put across your answers in the chat box. Feedback, isn't it? There is a feedback form that is distributed, right? There is a feedback form which is distributed. Question and answer. Yes, the participant will, the trainer should ask, how did the training go? Did you understand it or not? However, it's also important to capture that in a piece of paper, right? Basically, L1 is nothing but reaction feedback. It's nothing but reaction feedback. What is reaction feedback? Participants are reacting to the trainer or to the training. How are they doing that? They are doing that by filling up a feedback form which rates the trainer and the training and the relevancy of training to their job role, right? This is what L1 feedback is. I mean, I'm sure that all of you would have filled umpteen number of feedback forms all throughout your life. Any training that you would have attended in school, college, or in your respective organizations, you would have gone about filling in the L1 feedback form. This is what a typical L1 feedback form looks like. If you see, it talks about facilitator had adequate knowledge about subject of training, facilitator communication was effective, facilitator response to participants was effective. Basically, if you look at the first three criteria, what is it? It is a feedback on the trainer. I enjoyed the learning process. Concept and skills learned are relevant to my role. Ideas learned will make a difference in the way I work. I'm committed to using these ideas at work. Overall, the training program was effective. So if you look at first three criteria, it is feedback on the trainer. Next five criteria, if you look at it, is feedback on training. Basically, you are getting it rated in a scale of, the most used scale is scale of 1 to 5, where people go about rating them from strongly disagree to strongly agree. However, the best practice that I would suggest is for organization to use is scale of 4, not a scale of 5. Scale of 5 mostly has something called 3, which represents error of central tendency. Now, once you bring error of central tendency, the chances are that a lot of times this may give you tweak data, or this may influence a rater in terms of either underrating or overrating. If somebody has not liked, but a lot of times they do not want to give negative information, so safest choice is 3. A lot of times people are critical and they have not really enjoyed it, but instead of giving a negative feedback, they might give a 3, which is neutral. So so basically 3 disrupts the kind of input that you get. And it's always good to have a 4 rated scale for capturing the reaction feedback, right? If you cannot do that, then you can make 3 either positive or negative. So it can be strongly disagree, disagree, agree, strongly agree, very strongly agree. So if you see, even if there is a 3, 3 has a positive intonation to it or a negative intonation to it, the idea is that it should not be neutral. It should not be central, right? One of the best practices that we learn here in this webinar is that the most used form for training effectiveness, which we go about for measuring training effectiveness, should be in a scale of 4. And as we understand that it captures both quantitative as well as qualitative data, if probably I get a chance to show you, I will probably show you, this is what the feedback form may look like, that is printed and given, where you are your details are captured. The quantitative criteria in a scale of 4 is captured, and then some qualitative comments like what did you like most in the workshop, how would you apply these learnings at the workplace, what other changes would you suggest in case the same course is conducted in future. Questions like these are asked. Now remember, these are not this can be customized. You can have similar ratings. You can have different wordings for it. You, instead of facilitator, you can call it trainer. You can have not 8 but 6 criteria or 5 criteria. But the idea is that L1 is reaction of people towards the trainer or the training. It is the reaction of people towards the trainer or the training. Now this at least gives us some input, because what is the first input that we need uh, uh, to to conclude that training was effective? If participants have liked the facilitator, if they have liked the trainer, if they have understood what is being taught, we can assume if they have reacted well to the trainer and to the training, we can assume that they have understood and they have learned, right? Isn't it? That is what it means. Reaction feedback is nothing but positive reaction. What we are aiming at or what we are looking at is people reacting positively to the trainer or to the training. Yeah. However, it's not a true measure. It's not a true measure because look at behavioral training. Look at a team building training. People are off work, so they're not doing their regular stuff. So if it's not happening on weekends, people are anyways slightly happy because they don't have to do the regular mundane thing that they were doing. Any behavioral trainer, any soft skills trainer, any personal development trainer, most of them, 8 out of 10, would be good with people. They would be good with that developing rapport. They would be good with the interaction, and they can tend to develop rapport with all participants, where they create a liking for them by the participants. Now, if you like somebody, you will not underrate him, right? So getting a L1 feedback, getting a good reaction for an average trainer is very, very much possible, right? It's very, very much possible. And this is technically the worst measure of training effectiveness, though it is something which is done throughout. I think this is the most used method. In fact, 7 out of 10 organizations don't even move beyond L1. They consider L1 as L1 scale as as a benchmark for proving training effectiveness. This is not something that we should propagate. L1 is important because reaction of participants towards trainer and training is important. However, it's very, very important that people not only enjoy the session, they also learn in the session, right? So the next level of feedback is L2. This is a feedback on learning. I have enjoyed the session, wonderful. I have liked the trainer, great. I have liked the training, awesome. But have I learned? As a participant, I should know. And as a training department, as a L&D department, as a training vendor, we should go about asking this to the participants, whether they feel that they have learned or not, right? And capturing learning, right, is the L2 feedback. It's the next level in the feedback hierarchy, where after reaction, you are measuring whether participants have learned or not. How will you do that? You will do that by first setting up criteria for the learning. Any program that would happen on a structured design, isn't it? When you talk about ADDIE model in L&D, we are talking about analysis, and analysis gives us need for training. And post that, we design a program, design a curriculum, right? For every program has a curriculum or a program plan or a learning plan based on the inputs given by business, which is created, and it wants something to be achieved, right? It wants something to be covered. It wants some outcomes to be met. Capturing those outcomes or capturing that design in a form is L2. And participants rating it before the training and after the training would help you measure the learning. Let me give you an example here. This is what a L2 feedback form may look like. I'll show you a detailed form. I'll also show you a report of how a report would look. But just to explain, and maybe I'll just take 5 minutes here to explain this, because this is very, very important. We have moved from the regular L1 feedback to or reaction feedback now to learning feedback, right? Now, if you look at here, what is given here is pre-training, which is represented by A, post-training, which is represented by B, revised pre-training, which is represented by C, and changes between post-training and pre-training, and changes in revised pre-training and post-training. These are 5 data points that we are looking at capturing. Now, if we understand what A, B, C is, then understanding A to B and C to B is not difficult at all. Now, what is A? Rate yourself on criteria before the training. Now, let's say there is a program on presentation skills, and one of the criteria that a trainer has to cover is about being aware different presentation style. So you're asking the participant, being aware of my own presentation style, being aware of behavior of others while presenting, being aware of my strengths and weaknesses in making presentations. Or, for example, if we take a case of this webinar, this might look like understanding talent development, understanding different components of cost of training, understanding Kirkpatrick L1 level of evaluation, understanding Kirkpatrick L2 level of evaluation. Now, if I create this form and give it to you before the webinar starts, when you rate yourself, let's say in a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, that rating is captured under A, right? And once we capture that, I would give you the same form after I finish the webinar, right? And then you will again rate yourself after the webinar, and the difference in the score would capture learning. So for example, if I ask you Kirkpatrick level of L1 level of evaluation, L2 level of evaluation, some of you may not even have heard of what Kirkpatrick is. Some of you would have heard of it, right? Somebody who has not heard may rate themselves 0. Somebody who would have heard about may rate themselves 3. But once I go about explaining the 4 levels, your learning of this topic has moved from 3 to maybe 8 or 9. Right? Similarly, if you look at this example, being aware of my own presentation style, somebody may say, oh, I am totally aware of my presentation style. And they may rate themselves maybe 8 or 9. And when the trainer covers about different types of presentation style, he may not now cross the scale of 10, right? And because he may not cross the scale of 10, there is C, which allows them to revise A. Because these are all subjective criteria. Now, please understand, this is very, very important. I would like to give a minute again here. And just in case anybody wants me to explain again, they can again ping in and I would explain it again. A is before training, B is after training. But as the criteria are subjective and people are rating it before going through the learning process, they may tend to underrate or overrate themselves on these criteria. Now, after the training program, when they have clear visibility and clear idea of what they learned, they should not go to the A column, cut it, and change the score. They can go about revising their initial understanding or assessment under C. And that's why C say, would you like to revise A? Now, if I say what Kirkpatrick model of training evaluation before the training, and if you didn't know anything at all, you might rate yourself 0. But probably a normal feedback form that is given to you in training program, you are aware of it. You just don't know that it's called Kirkpatrick L1, right? So your initial assessment of 0 was wrong, and you should be able to change it to 3 or 4 or 5, and that is captured under C. Is it clear? Is it clear to everybody? Right? A quick yes would help. Right. Wonderful. So great. So this is what you're doing. You are doing a pre, you are doing a post, and remember, a lot of times when L2 or the learning feedback is called pre and post, calling it pre and post might be slightly wrong, because then you're only focusing on A and B. So if you're calling it a L2 feedback, or if you're calling it pre and post, don't forget that there is a revised pre. And that data is very, very important to capture. And then post training becomes the crux of measuring learning. So if you look at A to B, it is nothing but B minus A, because post training minus pre training, and C to B is nothing but B minus C, which is post training minus revised pre training. This entire data, right, though it can be very qualitative, it's now being represented in a quantitative way, where we have numbers capturing the learning. We have numbers capturing the learning. So how are we implementing it in a training program? What is the first thing that we are doing? We are setting up, based on the curriculum design or based on the program plan, we are creating criteria for the training that a trainer has to cover. Now, I as a trainer, I might be very good with covering learning effectiveness. I may not be very good with covering training design or training analysis. Now, if I have to conduct a session on L&D or for let's say for CHRMP, I have to conduct a session on training and development or talent development, then I may spend less time covering training analysis and much more time covering training effectiveness, because that's my comfort area, right? Now, participants do not have that idea. Once, and they like me probably as a facilitator or a presenter, and they give me amazing L1 feedback, right? However, in L2, I may get caught because the criteria that have been set for analysis have not been addressed. And when participants go about rating it, they find that all this has not been covered, right? So learning, it measures, it does a very, very important thing. It does something very important, that apart from reaction, it captures learning. It captures learning. Right? Now, I would like a minute to probably run you through, before we move ahead, through a typical training effectiveness report of L2, right? Now, this is a typical report that we submit to all. We do a lot of behavioral training. We do programs on leadership. We do programs on communication, campus to corporate, conflict management, team building, etc. And when we do these programs for various organizations, we invariably submit a L1 and L2 report for all our clients, right? So just to give you an example of how exactly this works, this is what L1 and so this is the L1 and L2 report. If you see, what does it say? It says Kirkpatrick level 1 and level 2 report, right? Now, if we come down, see, this is the reaction feedback. This is the reaction feedback. This is how people have gone about rating the trainer on, so there have been 24 participants. So 21 have strongly agreed, 3 has agreed. And if you look at the cumulative score, put everything together, it is 3.55 out of 4. Give me a moment, I can see some chat. Just give me a second. Okay, I'm not just, right? Probably I'll just come to the chat in a minute, wherein if there is a doubt or a query, I would probably answer that across. But just to give you a quick view of what a training effectiveness report may look like, this is the L1 feedback, and these are the verbatim of the questions that were asked down the form that I showed you and how people have gone about answering it on criteria like what did you like about the training? How would you apply this training at the workplace? What other changes would you suggest if the same course is conducted in future? Now coming to L2, if you see, it clearly talks about what A stands for, what B stands for, what A to B stands for, what C to B stands for, and then it talks about different participants, and then it talks about the criteria. Now there have been 14 criteria that have been set for this program, which has been covered by the trainer, and then this gives participant experience. There are 24 participants who have attended the workshop. Their cumulative pre-rating, their cumulative post-rating, and their cumulative revised pre-rating is captured here. Similarly, there are 14 criteria that have been set in this program to be covered. The cumulative pre-criteria, post-criteria, and revised pre-criteria is shown in this graph, right? If you talk about group learning, which is cumulative participant scores, it can be shown as percentage movement, average movement, and total movement, right? So if we add all the participant scores together before, after, and also consider the C, which is revised pre-training, it gives this data. And all this data was invisible to us because we were simply giving one L1 feedback form in a scale of 5 or in a scale of 4 and capturing it and seeing that rating. We were thinking the training went well, and training has went well, which means there would be people, we were assuming that people have learned, right? Now, this is a typical L2 report. This is a typical L2 form that you are able to see, and these are individual scores that has been captured, right? Any queries, any doubts, anything you would want me to answer here before we move to the can you see my screen now, all of you? I'm so sorry. Screen is not coming properly. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll redo it. Okay, give me a moment. I'll reshare my screen. Right? I'll reshare my screen. Guys, can you see it now? All of you? Wonderful. So I'll just run you through again the report quickly, right? I'll quickly do that. I'm so sorry. I should have seen this before. I didn't see this before. I thought it's some doubt that you guys are having. I would keep that in mind for future chats, right? So this is what I was talking about, right? This is the L1 score. L1 score in a scale of 1 to 4, if you look at 24 participants have gone about rating and putting everything together, 3 out of 4 is a rating, 4 out of 4 is a rating. So if you look at first criteria, facilitator adequate knowledge of subject of training. If you look at 3 participants have rated for agree, which has a rating scale of 3, 21 has rated for 4. So if you look at cumulative and average it out, it becomes 3.88. Similarly, if you do it for everything put together and you do the total cumulative, you see a net score of 3.55. You see a net score of 3.55. Yeah. These are qualitative comments. Remember, I showed you the feedback form where what did you like most in the workshop? How would you apply these learning at the workshop? What are the changes that you would suggest if the same course is conducted in future? All these questions are asked, and then you go about answering this, and that is also captured. Now, coming to L2 methodology, we talked about A, B, C, A to B, and C to B. And when we talk about this, you are seeing that different criteria have been set for the program. About 14 criteria are there in the program, and participants have rated them before, after, and revised pre on these 14 criteria. You can see the participant experience graph here for all 24 participants before, after, and revised pre, right? You can also see the 14 criteria, what movement they are showing before, after, and revised pre here. So it is cumulative of all participants' score for a particular criteria before and after. So this is what is seen in the L2 feedback form for criteria enhancement. And then you can see group learning. Group learning, I would come to the third graph first. This talks about total movement. Total movement is nothing but cumulative of all participants pre-score, all participants post-scores and revised pre-scores, which when divided by number of participants give us average score. And if it's multiplied and taken out in terms of the total score, percentage movement can be seen. The larger bit is that this data, this essential data, and a report like this was hidden from us because we were only doing a L1 feedback. We were only doing a L1 feedback. We were taking a reaction of participant, giving them a feedback form in scale of 5 or 4, and based on their reaction, we were considering the training to be a success. Is it clear, guys? Everybody with me on this? Right now, so give me a moment. I will reshare so that this mistake does not happen. Can you see the screen clearly, all of you? Is it visible? Wonderful, great, great. So now after L2, which is learning, now the ball is in participants' court. L1 and L2 are both feedback on the trainer or the facilitator. It's important that a trainer or a facilitator does their job properly and they're measured on reaction as well as learning scale. However, learning is incomplete. It's a two-way process. A facilitator can train or teach, but a participant has to apply, right? So when we talk about L3, it aims at, according to Kirkpatrick Model of training evaluation, it talks about measuring change in behavior. It talks about measuring change in behavior. How do we do that? We do that by tracking application of what they have learned, right? Are they using the skill or behavior on the job is being tracked, right? How will you track it? What I will do is that once I discuss L3 and L4, I would want you to get introduced to a tool that has been developed by Ripples. It's called Resultslab, which tracks L3 to a great extent, and in certain cases L4 as well. So I would be talking about that, which will give you an idea of how can you evolve a tool which measures L3, right? But that's a tool, that's a SaaS tool. But apart from that, how would you measure applications? So one way of measuring application is through success cases. Now, how do you measure success cases? So, or through reinforcement workshop rather than success cases. Reinforcement workshops. You do a workshop, so you've done a 2-day workshop or a 3-day workshop. You do a workshop after 21 days or after 45 days. And you get all of them together and you then ask participants a question asking in terms of how did they go about applying the learning and what experiences they had. And you capture these responses and you see the impact of this application of how it has changed things on ground. For example, you might have taught business negotiation in a training program, and the tools or techniques that you would have taught them after 21 days or after 45 days when you bring everybody in a group and you hear a case where somebody has been able to move a project deadline from an X date to a Y date, which means that the person has applied the learning, successfully applied the learning. Basically, it's capturing also L4, but somebody else would have applied the learning. He might have had a bad experience. Somebody might have had a neutral experience, but you are checking on how people have gone about applying the learning. Another way of building in L3 within workshop is that you do workshops over a period of time, which technically means that if you're doing a leadership workshop, you do a 2-day workshop and then leave participants with a learning project. And then you again do a 2-day learning intervention, maybe after 30 days or 45 days, capture what has gone about in terms of application of training in last 1 month or 45 days, and then teach them new concepts and again leave them a project. So you make it over a period of time and you run it through. If you run it through over a period of time, it technically means that people are aware and conscious and are using what has been taught on the job, which is very, very important. So either you change the structure of the program, wherein you run it over a period of time with learning projects embedded within the learning journey, or you do a reinforcement workshop where you reinforce the learning. They walk away, the trainer captures how training has been applied, and participants do apply because they're aware that there would be a reinforcement workshop that would happen after some time. So during that period, they are aware of that I have to go about applying this, and trainer captures that and leaves them with a learning and an implementation plan, which then these participants go about learning or implementing, right? So this is how L3 can be captured. However, as I said, I would introduce you to a very, very powerful tool in a while. Yeah, sorry. So it's the same thing. And L4 is result. L4 is success case. So basically, application of learning can result in success. It can result in failure. It can result in no result at all, right? So L4 basically talks about did the job performance improve as a result of training? If, let's say, if a sales guys were taught or trained, was the impact on sales resulted in increased sales or not? If a CSAT, a customer satisfaction guys, or customer service guys were taught, did it lead to better customer satisfaction score or not? Now, for sales, for customer satisfaction, for any technical training, it's really, really easy to measure. But apart from that, if we are talking about success or if we are talking about result being created, we have to really, really track that well. Now, normally this is done by making or giving training team a lot of powers, which means the training, the L&D function becomes very powerful, and it joins operations in terms of day-to-day activities and how it gets executed. So let me give you an example of one of the telecom giants. This telecom giant was doing a lot of DTH services and direct-to-home services and broadband services, etc. Now, DTH services, when the tech guys were going to install the DTH system, a new TV is getting installed and customer wanted more. There were a lot of housewives at home who wanted them to show their favorite channel, where it is, what it is, how it is. And when this was not being done by the tech guy, because their responsibility was just to install it and leave, there was a lot of negative feedback and a lot of customer dissatisfaction and a lot of people dropping out of, you know, the said DTS service. So what they did was they aimed at creating a L4 result or a success, and they included the training team as part of operations, which means trainer was involved in going door to door with, let's say, one tech guy and then another tech guy. So he would shadow one guy for 5 days, another guy for 5 days, another guy for 5 days, and teach him how to interact with customer, how to do that. He would first show it to him, then tell him to do it, and then tell him to and see the behavior, correct it. So basically he would do a lot of tweaking around, and then this resulted in improved satisfaction, improved customer satisfaction. So basically L4 can be achieved. There have been a number of success cases like this, whether in sales or whether in customer satisfaction or anywhere else, but it needs involvement of L&D at a different scale altogether, where they are able to capture success stories. There is another method called success case method, where after every training, you go about capturing the successful implementation. You do that by asking for emails, or probably sometimes organizations go about creating a WhatsApp group or something else where every success is captured, and that proves the result of the training, right? That proves the result of the training. Now, Coming to ROI, I think, how do we calculate ROI? There is a formula for ROI. I think this is a famous saying by Jack Phillip. He said, for every dollar invested in training, how many dollars does the employer get back? And that is what ROI is all about. ROI is net benefits into 100 divided by program cost. Now, how do you calculate net benefits? Program benefits minus cost is net benefits, right? So if you assign a dollar value to every benefit that post program through success case or through active implementation or through result creation has been tracked, then if you assign a dollar value, then you are able to calculate program benefits, and you can reduce the cost, and that would give you net benefit, and multiplying the net benefit into 100 divided by program cost would give you an ROI, right? Is it clear, guys? Is it clear? So this is what happens. So technically, this is the 5 scales of training effectiveness. I talked about 4 in Kirkpatrick: L1, L2, L3, and L4. However, considering ROI as well, you can consider it to be level 5. Level 1 is reaction. Did they like it? Level 2 is learning. Did they learn it? L3 is behavior. Did they use it? L4 is results. Did it impact the bottom line? And L5 is ROI. What is the return of investment on this, right? So this basically gives us an idea of what the training effectiveness is all about. Now I would probably introduce you to a tool which will help you track L3 and L4 results. But before that, I think we are running. Any questions you have? Any doubts? Any questions? Please chat with me before that. I can see a raised hand. Yes, Mohini, you probably can in the question and answer thing, you can probably type it across, or even in chat, you can do that. You can go about doing that. Anything that I need to know, anything I need to answer here? Okay, any questions, or I can move ahead? Can I move ahead, guys? Okay, great. So we have talked about, coming to sharing my desktop again. Yeah. So what have we talked about? We have talked about cost of training. We have talked about how important talent development is, and how cost of training, every investment that we make needs to be proven back to the business that it has been useful. We talked about Kirkpatrick L1, L2, L3, L4. We understood the best practice in L1. We understood how L1, L2 reports, the data can be captured, and how learning can be measured. We talked about L3 in terms of application of training. And we talked about L4, which primarily is about capturing success cases and results, and L5 in terms of capturing the ROI of training. This is what we have done so far. Now moving to what's changing, what's trending, and what's changing in terms of training effectiveness. And for that, let me introduce. So I did talk about limitation. Limitation is that a lot of time organizations just do L1, and they feel that if effective instruction has been carried out by trainers, an appreciation by participant is good enough indicator of training effectiveness. However, it is not. We moved, appreciation was given both in terms of L1 and L2. However, both L1 and L2 are not useful for ROI of training or effectiveness of training, because unless you apply the training, it doesn't mean anything. And once you apply the training, you create results which are favorable, or sometimes if not favorable, so you should be able to go and correct yourself either way, right? So application of training is the key challenge, right? And what happens primarily is that L1 and L2 being a feedback form can easily be measured by participants, by organizations. But when it comes to L3 or L4, or when it comes to application, there is inability to measure real impact of learning intervention. And this is a top concern for organizations because they're not able to do it, right? How do you do that? I mean, you cannot have one person assigned just to see how people are behaving and what people are doing. You need a platform on which participants interact, share, understand, and apply and share how they have gone about applying the training. So basically, why is this happening? This is happening because organizations are not able to provide a system to participants to convert learning into action. And this, so I have learned something. So I've attended this workshop today, or I have attended a workshop on presentation skills, or I've attended a workshop on leadership. Now I have some knowledge, right? But then once the workshop is off, I'm back to work. I'm seeing the same faces again. I'm working in the same environment again. A lot of times I have that learning, but it's getting lost, right? Now, if organizations are able to give a platform where now or a system where I am aware that a system exists, and if I am applying something, I can capture that there, then probably the chances of me consciously applying what I have learned would be much higher, right? So basically, this L3 fails, or L3 is not captured because organizations are not able to provide a system where data can be captured. Yeah. Right. Now, so this leads us to a very, very important question of how do we measure the real impact of learning at workplace? How do we do that? Now, and how do we ensure that learning that has been taught is being transferred and is resulting in change of behavior and creating impact and creating result, right? So there's a tool called Resultslab, right? Resultslab is available on it's a SaaS platform. It's a cloud-based solution. The website is www.resultslab.in. You can probably go on it. You can see what it does. But just to give you a very brief of what it does, because this is the only known tool which captures L3 effectiveness, apart from doing a workshop again. But doing a workshop again is a cost. People are again not working for that day. There's productivity loss, there is salary cost, there is trainer cost, there is infrastructure cost. This is more of on-the-go application capturing tool, right? So it's an online tool that helps organizations transform learning into change. What have you learned and how you are capturing the change, right? It measures learning interventions at third level of Kirkpatrick model. Now, third level, as I said, change in behavior, if it's being captured, an application of what you have learned can lead to a favorable result or unfavorable result. If it's favorable result, then it's also capturing L4, which is result, which is success. Yeah, it is based on active experimentation of Cole's model. Just if you can Google in Cole's model after this webinar, you would see that it has 4 stages, and one of the key stages is active experimentation and reflective observation, and Resultslab enables both, right? Now, this is what is happening here. Participate in learning event. They go through a training workshop. They talk about performance discussion. Then participant logins and action questions are created. The event, so basically after any training that you attend, the best chances of change in behavior is between 45 to 90 days. If a habit has to change, a behavior has to change, research suggests that it changes in first 45 to 90 days. And this is when the tool is on. Participants log in and share their experiences of how they have applied the learning event. This platform also brings in the trainer back, the manager and other participants. They are able to like, comment. Now, there is this whole buzz of social learning. Social learning primarily is where, I mean, people are very, very social today, right? They are very, very vocal. If you look at Facebook, LinkedIn, people share their experiences, their thoughts. There are a lot of agreements, disagreements happening, because people are much more vocal and much more social than how. So social patterns have changed. So basically, if a tool is social, if they are able to see other people comment, like, post, tag each other, it involves higher level of participation post programs, which creates favorable results. And after the event is over, a training effectiveness report, a L3 report, and I will show you how a L3 report would also look, is captured across, right? So basically, what is it doing? It is allowing organization to listen to participants in terms of idea implementation. Every time an idea is implemented, they are able to know how exactly the idea is getting implemented. It is able to provide an engagement platform to participants, where people are coming and sharing their thoughts. They clearly know how many ideas have to be applied, how many times it has to be applied for habit formation. They exactly know who is applying the idea. They know how many times one particular idea has been applied. The organization know which participant has applied how many times, which participant has not applied, what is the participation level, what are the positive experiences, what are the negative experiences. It allows to collaborate. So basically, otherwise what happens is that, let's say I'm a facilitator and I conduct a workshop, and once I'm out of the room, responsibility ends. I have gotten a good L1, L2 feedback, my job is done. However, how participants are applying the training is something that I have no clue about. Now, this brings facilitator and participants back together, right? So if a participant applies a training, he might have a good response or a good result. In that case, I can go about appreciating the participant. He may have a bad response or a negative experience. In that case, I can go about correcting it. He might have a neutral response. In that case, I might go about probably suggesting something new or an alternate method. So basically, it helps people collaborate. It helps analyze idea impact. So this is how exactly this works, right? How exactly it's working is that based on the criterias that were created for the L2 workshop, you are creating a powerful question. You are creating a question which is answered in a star format. So for example, when we are talking about clarity in communication, which is being taught, were you able to summarize after a work meeting to create gist of point discussed? Now, this is something that has been asked, and people have gone about giving their answers in a star format. Now, star is a very, very powerful format. If you have heard of BEI, behavioral event interviewing, or CBI, competency-based interviewing, you will see that we are capturing behavioral interviewing data in star format. So this is capturing data in a star format. It's saying situation, task, action, and result. If you look at, were you able to summarize after a work meeting to create gist of point discussed? If you see, Syed has responded by saying that yes, a meeting with the video quality team for discussion on integrating support for a future feature in front end. Task, the guy who developed the feature is leaving and will not be available to comment during integration in front end. Ensure to get as much information as possible so that we can integrate the front end easily. What was the action taken during the discussion? I kept making list of to do items. Post discussion, I volunteered to summarize the action items to ensure everyone is on the same page. Result, though I haven't integrated the feature yet in front end, but I'm confident and very clear of what needs to be done. Summarizing the points gave me and added confidence, and hopefully I will be able to integrate the feature with ease. Can you see this? I mean, this data was just not there after a training, right? A training has been done, summarization has been taught, an event has been created, a question has been asked, and a participant has captured a success story in this with the data, which can easily prove a L3 or a L4 result. Right? This data was just not there for an organization before that, and Resultslab is bringing that data, or L3 tool like Resultslab is bringing that data in forefront, which is proving the training effectiveness. Now, coming back to a slide before, if you look at after a program, maybe there were 10 criterias, and you can clearly see which participant has applied what idea how many times. Now, if this is one participant, Ravindra, who has applied 12 ideas for, let's say, 10 criterias or 8 criterias, you will exactly know how many participants have applied what. This will also help us plan for future sessions better. If there were 10 criterias and let's say majority of participants applied the first 5 ideas number of times, the next time when you're doing the same program, why to cover that 5 which has already been applied by participants? Why not do the rest, create a program or a program design which is focused on the rest 5? So this data is now with you and you can go about using it the way you want. Any which way we keep talking about HR analytics, data analytics, etc. With this data that you have of application experiences, situations faced, a lot of things can be done, right? In fact, some of the organizations, for example, if we are talking about sales team, every successful sale, or if we are talking about troubleshooting team, every problem that a troubleshooting team faced and the way they went about solving the problem, the step they took, or the way they went about making a sale and the way they made that sale, if it's captured, then it becomes a literature by itself, which can be used to refer to solve future problems or make future sales, and thus showing a direct impact of training, which can be related to result, business, revenues, and profits. Right now, from a training manager's perspective, you can go about seeing which are the programs, how exactly it's happening, what's happening. But technically, this is what is happening, right? Training is you're running the campaign with missions, points, and gamification. You are driving competency development through a competency framework. This is also allowing managers to trigger trackable actions through discussions, because this also has a manager login. So I, as a manager, if I have nominated 4 people to attend the workshop, I have no clue what these guys are doing after the workshop, but now I can see that these guys have applied so many ideas and this guy has not applied. So probably in my performance meeting or performance discussion, I can raise this up and have a fruitful discussion or discuss a way forward. So basically, when we talk about Kirkpatrick, and I will show you the report of how the report looks, but more importantly, when we talk about Kirkpatrick L1, L2, L3, L4, there are other models as well, but this is one of the most powerful models that we are aware of. L1, L2 is a feedback on the trainer. L3 and L4 is a feedback which is tracking how training has been applied. So it's tracking basically the participant and application by him. And if we are able to track both the training being good and facilitator doing the job well, and the participant doing the job well in terms of applying the training and creating results, I think we are creating a culture of talent development in an organization, which is definitely driving and achieving goals for an organization, right? So what training effectiveness can do is not only prove back to business in terms of how effective the training has been, it can show the real on-ground impact of what, and in terms of data, in terms of success cases, in terms of dollar value, that post this training, this is the impact that we have been able to create, and give enough input to business for future recommendations, as well as prove back to business that we have done our job well, right? So this is basically everything about training effectiveness. I'll quickly run you through the report. Are you able to see my screen right now, all of you? Are you able to see my? Right? Everybody able to see my screen? Okay, I will stop and share again. Guys, can you see my screen now? Okay, great. So L2 report, just L2 report may look something like this. L3 report, sorry, a Resultslab L3 report may look something like this. It would tell you about what has been the total number of idea implementation, what has been the average idea implementation per day. You can see what has been the cumulative experience. You can see 98% cumulative experience has been positive, 1% has been neutral, and 0.9% has been negative. You can see out of the total ideas that were given, 94.5% people have applied at least one idea. 5.5% people who have attended the program, they have not applied any ideas. You can see the participation with group names. So this is manager ID, and how many for manager with group ID 55, 30 ideas have been applied. With group ID 57, 29 ideas have been applied. Similarly, what were the questions? Like clarity in communication, were you able to summarize after a word meeting? The 100% positive results in terms of experience. In terms of participation, it is 88.9% people participated. These are some of the experts from the responses of what people have applied, the best 3 responses. And then similarly for each topic, you can see each criteria, you can see how many responses. So for clarity in communication, keeping audience responsive, 18 ideas implementations have happened. For eliciting information, 19 responses have happened. You can see exactly for each criteria how many responses have happened. Then you can also go about seeing participant experience. This participant who's, I mean, we are not sharing the name, but he or she has applied 14 ideas, and with 100% positive idea implementation. Participant 2 has applied 12 ideas. So similarly, so you have criteria specific report, you have participant specific report, you have overall data, and this is helping you prove Kirkpatrick L3 in terms of application, and in case of tangible outcomes, also L4, which is Kirkpatrick L4. Right, guys. So just coming back to where we started, we started with talking about training effectiveness. We talked about how it is a strategic priority for an organization and how talent development helps organization achieve it. We understood how much cost goes into creating or running one day of training. We talked about some of the problem statement businesses ask from training departments and HR managers to solve. We talked about one real issue which we all need to solve, which is whether talent development efforts are driving performance or not. We understood Kirkpatrick model of learning effectiveness of L1, L2, L3, and L4. We understood that L1 is reaction feedback and how it can be captured, and why a 4 scale is better than a 5 scale. We understood learning feedback, and we understood what A, B, C, A to B, C to B stands for, and how reports can be generated proving learning, which is much more serious than a normal reaction feedback, which everybody is doing. We understood change in behavior is about application of programs, application of what you have learned, and L4 about implementing and creating successes and performance at workplace. We also learned the formula for ROI and how exactly a dollar value is arrived at. The 5 levels of training effectiveness. We understood that most of the organizations across the globe are just doing L1 and they're considering it as a benchmark for training effectiveness, whereas tools like Resultslab can be used for tracking L3 and sometimes L4 results as well. And the impact, the impact that training effectiveness can do for a L&D department or for a HR department when it reverts back to business. It can negotiate better training budgets. It can have more say in decision making of the organization. It can have more aligned effort, it can structure itself well, it can really drive better training, better learning outcomes, and better performance for the organization, right? This is what we have discussed today, and now I would want you to go about asking me questions. You can see a question and answer session which I have just opened. If you can see, there is something called Q&A. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can go about asking those questions to me, and I would be happy to take it for all the participants. Any questions, guys? Or you can also ask me in the chat button, and I will be able to view it, and I will be very happy to answer that. Any doubts, any questions? Right. I would also want all of you to, if you are interested in human resource, we run a certification called CHRMP, Certified Human Resource Management Professional. As I said, it's a global certification. It teaches you the cutting edge concepts in human resource management. Like we introduced you to a L3 tool, which probably you were not aware of in this webinar. Similarly, in each vertical of human resource, whether it's talent development or talent management or talent acquisition or employee engagement or general HR or human resource business partner, you learn some key niche things. You should visit the website www.chrmp.com. And if you're looking at making or enhancing your career in human resource management, I would suggest you take up this certification. There are different levels based on your experience. You have foundation or associate level, you have advanced level, and this certification can also be done in our classrooms in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi in India, Dhaka in Bangladesh, and other branches across. And also it can be done online. So you can probably leave an inquiry there. I can see one question. Is there any online tool for ROI? Yeah, so when I suggested Resultslab, that was an online tool for ROI. It was tracking application, and it was tracking results. Now it does leave a room of improvement where dollar value is not being captured. Now this has to be assigned by the business, but it can then, at least we have that data to assign a dollar value to be able to calculate an ROI, which was not there. Right now, not all efforts result in a dollar value. For example, if it's a sales training, then a concept like spin selling being taught or something else being taught may result better prospecting, or closing technique or negotiation skill may directly lead to may directly lead to profits or earning of more revenues for the organization. In that case, something as tangible as sales or customer satisfaction, as I said, it's very easy to track a dollar value, which will help us calculate ROI. But for generic programs like leadership, team building, conflict management, you have to assign a dollar value through tracked application of data, which Resultslab is giving it to you, and that probably can then be used to calculate ROI, right? So you have something more substantial in hand to be able to calculate ROI, but yes, that has to be separately done in terms of using the ROI formula to calculate the level 5 and the dollar value. So I'm not clear with this question. Can you repeat the implications? I'm not You want me to I'm not able to understand this. Repeat the implication. You mean you want me to explain the ROI formula again? You can probably chat with me. We can chat. Right. So yes, as I said, the about the ROI, L3 and L4 data captured through application of training and through success cases. Yeah. Okay, so I took an example of a sales team. Let's say a sales team has undergone a sales training, and post the sales training, they have learned some concept on maybe negotiation skills, or they have learned some concepts on closing of sales, or better prospecting, or better customer management, or upselling. Now, if they have used the tool and that has helped them upsell, then the dollar value is very, very clear. If, let's say, you have bought an X amount from somebody, and somebody comes and sells a Y to you, then that Y of dollar value is very, very clear to you, because that's a clear dollar value. And what ROI formula wants is a dollar value to be able to calculate, because you're clear with program cost. You know how much you have gone about spending in terms of program cost. But in terms of what has been the net profit, or what has been the net benefit that you have arrived, for that a dollar value is important. And with sales training, with customer satisfaction training, I think CSAT scores, or uh, sales figures or revenues or profits, it's very, very easy to track, and that can help us that can help us calculate ROI. Yes, any other questions? Okay, so anything that you would want me to ask? I think I have. Right. Okay, so I think today we have gone about uh, covering uh, training effectiveness, which is very, very important. We have learned some new concepts, and do leave your feedback post the, the session. I hope you guys have enjoyed the session. As I said, that this webinar has been brought to you by CHRMP, which stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional, which is a certification that all HR professionals should see. The training effectiveness today has given us inputs in terms of much more than what we already know, which is the regular L1 reaction feedback. It has taught us L2, L3, L4, and also calculating ROI, and also introduced us to a tool for application, for measuring application of training. With this, I would like to end the webinar. Thank you guys so much for taking out time. I have extended by 25 minutes, and thank you for being so patient to attend this webinar for almost 1.5 hours. I hope to see you again. Every Wednesday, we do webinars on different topics. You can subscribe our webinar series, and you would be able to then get cutting edge updates all through the year. Thank you so much. Thank you for participating. Goodbye.